You don't notice the moment your life becomes expensive. It doesn't happen when you sign a mortgage. It doesn't happen when you buy a new car. It doesn't even happen when your paycheck gets bigger. It happens on an ordinary Tuesday. You're standing in the checkout line at a grocery store just outside Minneapolis. One basket, eggs, chicken, rice, coffee. Nothing unusual. The cashier says, "That'll be $96.48. You tap your card before your brain catches up. Approved. No panic. No checking your banking app. No quiet calculation in your head about which bill needs to wait until Friday. You grab the bags and walk outside. Halfway across the parking lot, something feels unfamiliar. Not happiness. Not relief. Just silence. 6 months ago, this exact purchase would have followed you home. You would have opened your bank app 3 times before pulling out of the parking lot. You would have replayed every item in your basket, wondering if the coffee was necessary, if buying the better chicken instead of the cheaper one had been irresponsible. You would have promised yourself that next week would be different. Instead, you unlock your car, set the groceries in the trunk, start the engine, and drive home thinking about absolutely nothing. That scares you more than the grocery bill ever did, because somewhere between worrying about every dollar and forgetting to think about money altogether, something changed. You just don't know when, so your mind starts searching backward, not years, just 6 months, back before the silence. Back when every notification from your bank felt like someone knocking on your front door after midnight. It was a Thursday morning, 6:18 a.m. The alarm had already gone off twice. You weren't tired. You were avoiding something. Your phone sat on the nightstand with one notification waiting. Checking account balance updated. You stared at it for almost a minute. Not opening it somehow felt safer than knowing. Eventually, you tapped it. Available balance $183.27. Payday wasn't until next Wednesday. Rent had already cleared. The electric bill hadn't. Neither had your internet payment. You closed the app immediately, as if the number could disappear if you stopped looking at it. Then you made coffee using the last filter in the box. You opened the refrigerator, half a carton of milk, 3 eggs, a bottle of mustard, nothing else. You stood there longer than necessary, not because you were hungry, because you were trying to figure out how you'd somehow worked 45 hours that week, and still ended up here. Later that afternoon, your coworker, Melissa, dropped a shopping bag onto her desk. She smiled before pulling out a brand new pair of white Adidas Sambas. "I've wanted these forever," she laughed. You smiled back. "They look great." And they did. But your brain wasn't looking at the shoes. It was calculating. $120. Almost your entire grocery budget. Funny how money quietly changes the way you see other people's lives. You stop noticing what they bought. You only notice what it must have cost. Driving home that evening, you passed a billboard advertising luxury apartments downtown, now leasing, starting at $2,850 per month. 6 months earlier, you would have laughed. Now you caught yourself doing something stranger. You divided the rent by your hourly wage, then multiplied it by the taxes that would disappear before your paycheck even arrived. By the time the light turned green, you'd already decided you'd never live there. Not because you didn't want to, because your brain had quietly stopped believing it was allowed. That night, instead of watching another finance video telling you to stop buying coffee, you opened your laptop, blank spreadsheet, no budgeting app, no colorful charts, just one question: where is my money actually going? The first number surprised you. Subscriptions, music, streaming, cloud storage, apps you forgot existed, $93 every month. The second number hurt more. Takeout, $418. Not because you loved restaurants, because most nights you came home too exhausted to cook. You weren't wasting money. You were paying to feel less tired. That realization sat differently. It wasn't guilt anymore. It was information. Then you reached the credit card section. Balance, $7,842. Interest rate, 22.4%. You'd seen those numbers before. You'd just never allowed them to exist in the same sentence. For the first time, you multiplied the balance by the interest. You realized how much money disappeared every single month without buying you a single thing. You leaned back in your chair. The apartment was quiet. Traffic moved outside your window. Someone upstairs dropped something heavy. Life kept moving, but something inside you stayed completely still. You weren't looking at debt anymore. You were looking at a machine, one designed to quietly collect pieces of your future every month you pretended not to notice. And for the first time, instead of asking, "Why am I always broke?" you asked a different question. What happens if I finally stop looking away? The question followed you into Friday. Not loudly, not like motivation, more like a song you couldn't stop hearing after the music ended. What happens if I finally stop looking away? The answer didn't arrive all at once. It arrived one receipt at a time. Saturday morning, sunlight spilled across your kitchen counter while you emptied every receipt from your wallet. Gas station, pharmacy, coffee, lunch, random convenience store. Purchases you couldn't even remember making. You lined them up across the table, not to judge yourself, just to see the pattern. Money, you realized, almost never disappeared in one dramatic decision. It leaked. $5 here, $12 there, $27 because cooking felt impossible after work. Each purchase looked harmless by itself. Together, they had quietly built a life you couldn't afford. That afternoon, your older brother called. He wanted to grab dinner. Same restaurant you always went to. Nothing expensive. Still, you hesitated, not because of the bill, because you were tired of pretending everything was fine. "I think I'm gonna skip tonight." "You okay?" "Yeah. Just trying to get my finances under control." Silence. Then he laughed. "About time." You expected judgment. Instead, he told you something you'd never heard before. "I was 28 before I admitted I was broke." You stopped talking. "I spent 2 years pretending I had everything figured out. Worst decision I ever made." The conversation lasted 11 minutes, but something changed. Shame loses a surprising amount of power once another person says they've carried it too. Sunday became cleaning day, not the apartment, your financial life. You canceled subscriptions you hadn't opened in months, sold an old gaming console collecting dust under the TV, listed a designer jacket you'd convinced yourself was an investment. By Tuesday evening, $468 had landed in your checking account. Not life-changing, but honest. For the first time in months, money arrived without borrowing it from your future. You transferred $200 directly toward the credit card. Your thumb hovered over the confirmation button. Then you pressed it. Nothing happened. No fireworks. No dramatic soundtrack. Just a smaller balance. Still, you stared at the screen longer than necessary. Because for once, the number had moved in the right direction. That feeling stayed with you all week. Wednesday brought another surprise. HR sent the annual retirement benefits reminder. Normally, you deleted those emails before reading the second sentence. This time, you opened it. Company match. 50% of your contributions. Up to 6% of your salary. You grabbed a calculator, then calculated it again because surely that couldn't be right. You'd been walking past free money every payday, simply because you'd never stopped long enough to understand it. That evening, you increased your contribution. The next paycheck would be a little smaller. Oddly, that made you feel richer. Thursday afternoon, your co-worker Ethan pulled into the parking lot with a brand new pickup truck. Everyone gathered around, leather seats, huge touchscreen, fresh dealership smell. Someone asked what the payment was. Only $700 a month. Only. The word echoed in your head all afternoon. Driving home, you imagine that same $700 moving somewhere else, not into a driveway, into your future. It was the first time a monthly payment looked heavier than the object attached to it. Friday night, you cooked dinner instead of ordering delivery. Nothing impressive. Rice, chicken, frozen vegetables. You ate alone at your small kitchen table. Halfway through the meal, you realized something strange. You weren't thinking about what you couldn't afford anymore. You were thinking about what this simple dinner quietly made possible. Another payment, another transfer, another week without making things worse. Momentum is difficult to describe until you've felt it. It doesn't arrive like confidence. It arrives like proof, small enough to ignore, powerful enough to change direction. By the end of the month, your credit card balance hadn't disappeared. Your income hadn't doubled. Your apartment looked exactly the same. But every dollar entering your life finally had somewhere to go before temptation found it first. Then, a notification appeared on your phone while you were brushing your teeth. Payroll processed. Tomorrow would be payday. 6 months ago, you would have wondered how quickly the money would disappear. Tonight, you are about to discover what happens when your paycheck already has a plan before you wake up. Saturday morning arrived quietly. No excitement, no celebration. Just another paycheck landing in your account before sunrise. Only this time, the money barely stayed there. Rent left automatically. A transfer moved into your emergency fund. Another landed inside your Roth IRA. Your retirement contribution had already been taken before the paycheck even reached your checking account. You watched the notifications appear one after another. For a second, it almost felt wrong, like someone else was spending your money. Then you realized something. The version of you making those decisions wasn't today's tired version. It was the version who sat at the kitchen table weeks ago with a spreadsheet and finally decided what every dollar was supposed to do. Today's version didn't have to be disciplined. Yesterday's version already handled it. That single realization stayed with you all month. A few weeks later, your car made a sound you've never heard before, a loud metallic clunk every time you turn left. 6 months ago, that sound would have meant panic. You would have opened your credit card app before calling the mechanic. Instead, you opened your savings account. Balance, $2,184. Not enough to buy another car. More than enough to fix this one. The repair cost $846. You paid, drove home, and nothing else in your financial life changed. No new debt, no balance growing quietly in the background. Just another expense doing what expenses are supposed to do. Appearing, then disappearing. That's when emergency savings finally made sense. They don't stop bad things from happening. They stop bad things from becoming expensive for years afterward. A month later, your manager asked if anyone wanted to help lead a new project. Normally, you would have stayed quiet. You were too busy trying to survive. This time, you raised your hand, not because you suddenly became fearless, because your entire life no longer depended on every single paycheck arriving exactly on time. Security changes the way you speak. It changes the jobs you apply for, the conversations you're willing to have, the risks you're finally able to take. 3 months later, the promotion came, a 7% raise. It wasn't life-changing money, but unlike previous raises, lifestyle inflation never found it. The extra income quietly joined the same automatic system. Future you received every dollar before, present you had the chance to spend it. One evening, your friend Melissa texted a picture of another shopping trip. Designer bags, shoes, dinner downtown. You smiled 6 months earlier. That photo would have made you question your entire life. Tonight, it looked like someone else's choices, nothing more. Comparison had quietly packed its bags and left while you were too busy building something stronger. Near the end of the year, you opened your investment account, not because you were worried, just because you hadn't looked in a while. The balance wasn't unbelievable. It wasn't enough to retire. It wasn't even enough to impress strangers online. But then you noticed something. The account had earned money while you were sleeping, while working, while grocery shopping, while sitting in traffic. For years, you believed money only came from hours worked. Now, some of it came from patience. That might have been the biggest shift of all. Late that night, you found yourself standing in the kitchen. Same apartment, same refrigerator, same coffee maker. You remembered the morning when opening your banking app felt like opening bad news. Back then, fear wasn't living inside the numbers. It was living inside the uncertainty. You thought becoming financially stable would feel dramatic. It didn't. There was no perfect morning, no movie scene, no moment where life suddenly looked different. The change happened quietly. One automatic transfer, one payment, one uncomfortable decision, repeated so many times that eventually they became your normal. The interesting part wasn't that your bank balance had grown. It was that your attention had changed. Money stopped being something you reacted to. It became something you directed. Tomorrow morning, you'll probably reach for your phone before your feet touch the floor. Maybe that habit never disappears, but one day, you'll open your banking app, see the number, and instead of asking, "How am I going to survive this month?" you'll ask something far more powerful. What should this money do for me next? That's the question that changes everything. Because financial freedom doesn't begin with becoming rich. It begins the morning you stop letting your money make decisions for you and start making them for your money.